welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today I'm excited for the, second project of this year, and Spooky has come to say I'm excited too. She also came to stand on all the things I need. Get out of here. I put in these cat bookends and Spooky's afraid of them. And she just caught sight of another one. Is she gonna bop it? Now that we've had that spooky joy, you're fine, they're not real cats. With it being the middle of January and pretty dreary, I have decided to work with some really bright neon taffeta-y fabric to make a really fun dress. So this is the fabric I'm working with. I didn't need to do this. This is now the second project that is gonna have been free fabric-wise because I got this as a gift from a friend who didn't like this color once she saw it in person after ordering it online. Not intentional. I will pay for the fabric of the next project I do. This is the pattern I'm using. This is a pretty tried and true 1950s new look thing. Excuse you. Spooky is like, I should just scoot so you can watch Spooky behind me up to her shenanigans. She's eating a ruler right now. This is a true new look pattern. I thought it would be fun to also do something really big and poofy that's 50s. This is a size 14, which is closer to my current size right now than some of the size 12 patterns I have. And I think this will keep it from looking like a gown. I did say I was making less gowns this year, and this could turn really gownish really fast, but I think if I style it casually enough, I will have the ability to wear this pretty casually. I mean, honestly, this is the type of dress that I'll wear casually anyway. I think it's a poly taffeta, so it'll be easier to wash and all that jazz. I've already pre-washed it, so we're good to go there. This should be pretty simple to make, so I'm excited. I haven't made this style of dress on my channel in a really long time because I've been kind of stuck in a late 30s, early 40s thing. I actually picked out a pattern for this project initially that then I realized I had done on this channel about this time last year. We're switching it up, we're doing this pattern, and yeah, I think we're just going to start with cutting it out, which cutting it out will be interesting because it is a stripe, so I need to kind of decide intentionally where I want my stripes to match because they aren't going to be able to match everywhere. So that will also be interesting. So we're going to hop right to the cutting out after I prep my pieces with both an iron and all that stuff. Here I was going to show you me ironing out the pattern pieces. However, I goofed and there is a petticoat in here. I started ironing a waistband and I was like, wait, a waistband in this dress doesn't make any sense. I am not making this petticoat, but I did iron all the rest of my pattern pieces. Also, while unpacking this pattern, I learned that it has no instructions. I'm sure I bought it that way. However, now I am going to have to figure out how to do this by my own. I feel pretty confident because this is a pretty standard pattern, but it is a new challenge. So for this project, one of the most important things while cutting is going to be matching stripes. I am choosing to kind of use the waist as my matching point because I think this will keep the most consistent down the skirt. However, because these are not repeating stripes, it's going to be fairly impossible to get them to match anyway. So it is what it is and I'm going to let it go. The other thing you see me doing here is using my ruler to fill in. I have some space in between the skirt to waist because I shortened it by 2 inches because I knew otherwise it would end up really, really long. And then from there, I'm just cutting out this pattern. This pattern sort of has a lot of pieces, sort of doesn't. I believe it has around 8 pieces, and that is not too shabby. I, of course, had Spooky running around as well during this. And as always, here is where I'm going to put your reminder that I now have a monthly membership, both over on Ko-fi and Patreon, which I have linked down below. If you want early access to videos, as well as project updates and polls, you can find them over there in my paid memberships. Next up, my job is to pick a zipper, so I'm measuring down the back. The back goes fairly high, so my plan is to find a 24-inch zipper, which requires flipping through a bunch of colors. I don't usually show you guys this process, but I'm starting off with the zipper to have it done and over with. I always move the zippers to the back because the way my body is, if I have a side zip and I hit that angle just wrong, I will cause back spasms that will take me out for a while. So I try to avoid that by just having a back zip that I can zip up with an accessibility tool. After sewing up the back and pinking it, I am now unpicking where the zipper actually goes down until, and from here I am just sewing in the zipper by going all the way down and around and back up. As always, I use no pins and just go as I feel. This usually works out pretty well for me. It might be like a 1/4 inch crooked on the top, but it keeps the zipper from bubbling, which often happens if I pin it all the way down. So this is my method and what works for me. Now I'm going to tackle the darts. This pattern has 4 darts, 2 on some side panels and 2 on the back panels. This will help nip the waist in and give even more of a flared look. So I am first marking those with a pen that will disappear when it is sprayed with water, before then pinning these as evenly as I can and prepping them to sew. And I'm of course being really careful when I sew these because they both end in points, so I can't really just start them willy-nilly. I have to make sure I'm getting as close to the edge of the fabric as possible. And then it's knot tying time. I used to hate tying knots for some reason, but now I kind of like it. So sometimes you change, I guess, what you enjoy in the sewing process. After that, I am pressing the dart to point towards the middle. And now that the darts are in, I am pinning together our first few layers. So I am pinning together the 3 front panels and the 3 back panels essentially, taking care to be as careful as I can easing in the princess seam. I probably could have cut the fabric, but I don't know why, but cutting the fabric always makes me really, really nervous. And then I'm doing my best while sewing to ease in the princess seam. I, however, was unhappy with it. And after sewing it, I had some creases I wasn't happy with. So I unpicked parts of the princess seam and I am now getting it re-eased to sew. Once this was done, I off camera sewed the side seams up, which meant I could try this on. This was quite a bit too loose, so I had cut extra room in this dress. I think I need to learn for size 14s. I don't need to cut any extra room. This is the second size 14 that I overestimated how much room I'd have to add and basically took it back to the original pattern. So here I am just sewing in that correction, which is about the 1/2 inch I added on each side. Yes, 14 is very much my size now, and I think I can trust that after doing this for several patterns. And then after I had the new seams in, I unpicked the old seams that were a little bit further to the side. And the main perk of having done this is I actually have an extra inch of seam allowance. If for some reason at some point my weight fluctuates and I have to shift over this dress, it will still fit me. So that's really great and something I'm thinking of adding to my practice. And once I'm finally happy with those seams, I'm finishing them by pinking. I pinked this dress because taffeta is usually a thick enough weave to not fray further. And then of course I will press these seams open. Pressing is a good portion of sewing, and if you skip it, it will impact how your sewing looks. So even though, of course, like every normal person, I do not super love pressing, it gives me such great results that I have learned to find a lot of satisfaction in it. And then here I am pinning where the ties attach to the dress. This will have some facing ties as well as then the ties on the dress itself, which is what I am doing here. So now I can focus on the facing. Here I am sewing the side seams, which are just little baby seams. I am then pressing those tie seams open. Of course, the stripes don't match, which is to be expected. I guess I could have tried to match them, but honestly, I just went kind of wild and did what I wanted to do here because I assume in the knot you won't see the seam. And then at this step, I am also going to press up the edge of the facing by a 1/4 inch. That way I can stitch the edge down and it will look neatly finished when I finish the garment. From here, I am pinning the facing to the dress. Everything matched up really well, which I'm super glad for because I did some weird math when I added all those extra seam allowances that I was a little concerned was going to cause a lot of puckers in my facing. But I did my math correctly and then I undid my math correctly, so we ended up with happy facings. And then after that, I am clipping my corners and my edges and curves and all that jazz so that way I can get a nice clean press on these pieces. And then after pressing, I'm of course understitching the parts that I can. This is just around the front neckline and the back neckline. Of course, I can't really understitch the straps. And then I am putting in my label, just using a simple zigzag stitch. I am almost out of my custom labels. If you would comment down below where you buy your custom labels, I'm looking for something thinner and more like a ribbon and not quite as big as the label I currently have. And I know it's hard to tell, but I actually have popped over into a sewing retreat, so I'm not in my space. And what I'm doing first is I am sewing. And then I'm also going to be putting in a bunch of basting stitches so that way I can ease the hem at the bottom since this is a circular skirt. I really wanted to not have to take this dress on my sewing retreat, and luckily I just had to finish it up here, but I ran out of time the prior weekend, which just sometimes happens. So as a result, here I am. I will say a perk of this is they have a nice big ironing table, so I was able to have lots of space to spread out this skirt, pull those basting stitches to ease in the bottom of this hem, and iron away. And now I'm on to my final step, which was an hour and a half of hand sewing. I took a break from the hubbub downstairs, sat myself in the couch at the window, which overlooks the farm, and just enjoyed stitching while watching some YouTube. I was watching Stephanie Canada's trim video in this, and very thankful that most of the trims I wanted sold out because we all know I don't need any more trims. Other than that, I am basically done with this dress, so we will be hopping into the reveal. Have seen the reveal. I wanted to do it outside, but it has been in the negatives the weekend that I planned on filming it, so I filmed it inside in the house I was at the retreat with, which at least was cute. My house is less cute, so it worked out just fine. It's been really chilly. I left some sparkling water cans in my car and they exploded, which I forgot was a thing because I haven't lived somewhere that gets cold this long in like 10 years, so whoops. But now that my car smells like apple cider, we can now jump into the wrap up of this, which is going to include a cost breakdown, and my final thoughts on this project and this pattern. I have my spreadsheet. So again, I am not going to count this towards my projects that are $50 and less. Next 2 weeks from now, that project will be fabric that I actually sourced and will stay under $50. So the fabric for this was free because it was from my friend Heather, because again, she didn't expect it to be as neon as it ended up, and since it was neon, she didn't want it, and I love neon, so it worked well for me. I actually think this dress would be so fun to wear anywhere with black lights. As far as notions, this was really minimalistic notion wise. I used one thing of thread and one zipper, so that is $2.55. And then for the pattern, I had to guess. I am sure I picked it up in person because I can't find it anywhere on my online history. So I'm guessing I don't pay more than $12 for patterns in person. So that is what I'm guessing it will be, because often when you're in person, you can't actually like confirm that all the pieces or, you know, the instructions that weren't there are there. Because of that, that's what I assume I paid around. So that brings us to a supply total of $14.55. If you compare this to things you see on now all the different modern reproduction vintage shops left my brain. Modern reproduction sewing, this is obviously significantly cheaper than that. I actually think it would be pretty hard to find a dress of this cut at that price point, and you obviously certainly could not find it at that price point from a brand that supports ethical labor practices. So with labor on the mind, let's go into our labor hours. I spent 1.5 hours cutting, 5 sewing, pressing, whatever, using my machine essentially, and 1.5 hours hand sewing. So that brings me to a total of 8 hours on this dress. I'm a little surprised that this dress took that much time. I think it mainly took that much time because I had to make all those fitting adjustments, which is my bad. Like I said, I'm gonna just run with a size 14 and stop trying to adjust it. It's a size 12 that I really need to adjust, so I need to leave my size 14s alone. And if we multiply that by $35.39, which in Seattle, that is what constitutes a living wage. A living wage to me means that you have enough money for food, housing, something left over to save or treat yourself with. We're all people and we deserve to enjoy our lives. and I think part of a living wage is enough money to enjoy your life. Obviously, if you were actually paying someone to sew stuff, you would not choose Seattle because the living wage is higher than other parts of both the United States and the world. But that, multiplying that 8 hours by $35.39 brings us to a total of $283.12. Adding that with the supply cost would be $297.67. That basically wraps that up. I actually think around $300 would probably be a little pricey for a dress like this, but then I think of the fact Selkie's not like a great example, but Selkie sells a lot of dresses for around that price point that are also fully polyester, because to me it's the polyester that would knock this down, or it could be nylon. I can't really tell from a burn test. That makes this cheaper. I don't necessarily think that would be, I personally would never spend $300 on a dress like this, but unless it's a sewing project, I never spend that much on clothing anyway, because for me, a lot of the sewing project, the reason I'm spending the money is because I genuinely really enjoy what I'm doing. But enough of this, let's talk about the whole project. Something you guys asked for in one of my videos was a little bit more about how I styled my pieces. Often, of course, I show you like an idealized version in the reveal or something fairly plain that doesn't distract from the dress. All depends on the reveal, the time I have to get ready, all that jazz. I am going to pop in a photo here of how I styled this for my test day test drive at work on checking how this fit. I styled it with a turtleneck, and then I added some cute funky earrings you can't really see in the photo, and I styled it also with, I picked up some waterproof boots because it's been now very rainy after being very snowy, and they're also, it has good traction since there's ice. Normally I would actually just pair these with a plain black like American Duchess shoe, but because of the snow I had to pair it with the boots. I think this dress fits really well once I refitted it. I'm really happy with it. It's pretty comfortable. I will say the one thing I should have done is shortened the waist even more. I shortened the waist by I think a ½ inch. I think I needed to shorten it by the full inch, which now that I'm thinking about it, I used to be better about making those waist adjustments before I was making 16 other adjustments. So I need to go back to shortening the waist because a lot of these dresses are riding up on me because they're just a wee bit too long there. As far as like how this project went, honestly, for the fact I had no instructions to work with, I think this went really well. I have very few sewing flaws, I would say. The biggest flaw it has is, despite my best efforts, I still ended up with 1 or 2 pleats in the princess seams. And while I really like how the stripes align on the skirt, the stripes don't quite align on the bust maybe the way I want. It probably would have been fairly impossible to get it match on the bust the way I would have liked. Honestly, it was pretty easy. I always worry when working with synthetics about melting it with my iron because the heavier you can heat things, the better they press. So I always am living a little bit on the edge when I'm working with a synthetic, which is another reason I don't often work with synthetics. I'm happy. I think this project really worked out. I also feel really cute in this. I actually can't wait to wear it in actual appropriate weather. I know this was kind of a funny make for January because it's so cold, but it was a bright and sunny project for me to put my focus on for a bit. So I enjoyed that. That wraps up with this project. As always, if you have made it this far, definitely subscribe down below. I would love to have you around. Of course, you can support me by going over to my memberships on either Ko-fi or Patreon. And then, of course, there is the free ways to support me, such as commenting down below, giving this a thumbs up, and like I said, of course, subscribing. I post every single Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and I would love to see you there. Bye!